Welcome to Commander Central episode 210, and today we'll be taking a look at the new Jumpstart expansion. I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.
Max, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dana. It's Friday. We're recording once again on a Friday afternoon. My non-MTG hobby, Borderlands, dropped new content, so that's what I'm doing all weekend.
That's your weekend plan?
That's my weekend plan.
I kind of like this Friday afternoon recording thing we've been doing because it just feels real like you're in like a real laid-back mood easing into the weekend, so I kind of have been appreciating that vibe this summer since we've been doing this.
Yeah, me too. And, there's some weeks where it makes my afternoon, go really quick, the remainder couple hours of work. And then there are those couple Fridays where it's like, oh, I have 2 hours of work and it's only been 5 minutes.
Right. Now, I went to, because we're talking about Jumpstart, and we did just finish up the core set. I mean, our last show was that core set preview, last Monday's show anyway.
Yep.
So I was looking at singles, like, okay, is there a few things I want to order? And I went to look, and I'm like, is stuff out yet? I have no, this time last year, I knew when pre-release was, and he knew when release was. Like, you just knew those things as cards came out. And I have no idea, because of this whole COVID thing and like quarantine and that kind of thing, I just have no clue what the dates are for anything currently. I don't know if core set came out already. I think it did. At very least, it's online available, but I don't know if like the physical cards are yet.
I believe it hit Arena this past week, and as we're recording is the first day of pre-release in paper for those who have LGSs to go participate in or choose to participate in.
Okay, so that technically should be this weekend, so we should be able to get like boxes. Well, I guess you can get them if you pre-ordered them this weekend then. Okay, and then, so normally then you can buy packs next weekend, and then Jumpstart is
the middle of July. I think the release date is like July 17th.
It's just totally, you just organically knew that, 6 months ago, and now I just have no clue what's going on.
That's weird how you say that. Because when we used to play in person at the shop, every week or every other week, I would feel like, oh, a set is coming. Like, oh, I feel like it's been forever since the last set. And now since we don't play in person, we play on webcams and we talk in Discords and chat rooms, I feel like they feel like they're coming faster. And I know they technically are, but it doesn't feel very long since Theros just came out, where I think playing in person for me, it feels like, oh yeah, Theros came out months ago. I'm over that.
Yeah. Well, like Jumpstart, literally started the next day after we finished the previews for the core set. And, hey, Zendikar Rising, a month. We'll start getting those previews, I would guess.
Isn't that October?
I thought it was, well, again, here we are. We don't know exact dates anymore.
Listeners, you tell us.
September. Right. I thought it was end of September, but it could be. And we're also going to get a couple Commander decks there. So,
yep.
Yeah. And then that flows into Commander Legends and Dual Masters.
Double Masters is in August. Masters.
Yeah. Oh, it never ends. Good, though. It's good, though. In a way, it gives us something to do, plenty to talk about in the podcast, get some good reprints.
Yes.
So, speaking of good reprints, there's a lot of them here, and I think we will probably cover those after we do the new cards. Does that sound good?
Sounds great to me.
All right. Well, before we get to talking about the stuff from Jumpstart, I think we have a few new Patreons to say thank you to.
Yeah, so if you are able to support our show, head over to patreon.com/CMDR Central and check our reward tiers, such as the Decks You Play series. And this week we want to say thank you and welcome to Trent Trombley for upping their pledge to us, Spearfish High School Game Club, which I think is Ryan Sullivan.
Yes,
and
I believe so.
Travis Cole. So we want to say thank you to those three people this week for joining and supporting us to keep the lights on. And I guess since what we have planned for video in the future, nobody will get to see me be in pants or without pants. So you might buy me pants. You never know.
At the very, very least, we appreciate the listens and the upvotes and the likes. That makes a big difference, too. So that is support in and of itself, and we appreciate everything all y'all do for us.
Yes.
All right. Should we just jump straight into looking at this Jumpstart set that I don't think has any reprints of the Jumpstart mechanic in it?
Oh, that would be so confusing.
Sure. Yeah, no kidding. That'd have been a nightmare. So new cards first, and we're just going to go through this by Wooburg order in the color group. I think we don't got to do all of them.
Right.
And the first card alphabetically among the new cards in the first color is one I will touch on briefly. That's Blessed Sanctuary. 3 white for an enchantment. Prevent all non-combat damage that will be dealt to you and creatures you control. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white unicorn creature token. I think this is relevant because number one, there's been a few unicorn unicorn things recently. People just kind of like unicorn for the mimic value. But above and beyond that, oftentimes we have things in the game that prevent non-combat damage that will be dealt to creatures, or it prevents non-combat damage that will be dealt to you. But I don't know if we have anything, particularly on an enchantment, that does both simultaneously. And there's a lot of decks where that's kind of relevant. In my case, I did just build a Pestilence deck, and it's nice to have the option to not have that Pestilence damage dealt to my creatures and to myself. And for the most part, I have to have multiple different things to do that. This lets me do just one of those things. I think it's worthwhile for that alone. It also does make you the tokens when a non-token creature ETBs, that's very useful. I think decks like Archangel Avacyn that also tend to do damage to a lot of different creatures might find this useful. And it's ETB, it's not cast, so if you're doing blink deck shenanigans, this might be something to consider too, because it's just going to generate you a bunch of tokens.
Yep.
So it's a card I like and wanted to briefly touch on it, even if it's maybe a little bit narrow. So I will pass to you, Max. What do you got for me?
Next one on the list, we're just going to keep going with that unicorn theme with Brightmare. It's 2 and a white for a creature unicorn. It's a 2/3, and when it enters the battlefield, tap up to 1 target creature, and then you gain life equal to that creature's power. I think this is just for the unicorn decks that are going to be coming due to the next card we're going to talk about. I don't see that tap 1 creature down being very effective unless you can abuse it in EDH specifically, but when you do this Jumpstart stuff, maybe playing 1-on-1 just to try out the product, this might be kind of a powerhouse.
Yeah, and it taps and it gains you life. That's 2 things. I don't think it's probably enough gas to be worthwhile in, like, say, example, your Brago deck or a Rune deck or something. Usually when they're blinking stuff, they're trying to do things that are way more backbreaking than that. That's not terrible for 2/3.
No, we don't try to do backbreaking things in those decks, Dana.
Well, you mentioned unicorn decks. I guess we're still talking about them. Next one is Emule the Blessed, 2 white for 4/4. Legendary creature unicorn. We got a legendary unicorn, all you bronies out there.
Yes, I can finally build my brony deck.
And I guess technically this is a Selesnya card because it has a Selesnya ability. Well,
yes.
You know what? I say that, but does that count as reminder text like Extort or no? It does not.
Nope, it is part of the cost. Yep.
So it is Selesnya. Exile another target creature you control and return it to the battlefield under its owner's control for 3 mana, and that's not a tap ability, it's just activated. So that, maybe mediocre Brightmare card suddenly gets way better in that particular deck. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay Selesnya, either or, it's hybrid. And if you do, put a +1 counter on it. If it's a unicorn, put 2 +1 counters on it instead. Build unicorns, Max? Is this the deck for you?
No, it's not. I would for the meme value, but I think it's just going to be everywhere because of the meme value.
I tend to agree. But I'm glad to see them doing things for people that want weird themed decks.
Yes.
So, what's next?
The next one is just a sorcery. Release the dogs for 4 mana. You create 4 1/1 white dog creature tokens. So, I definitely know we get Ren and Stimpy for the box topper and core set. This is probably just going to go right into it. It's nice that these products are coming out right after each other so you can support those new creature types pretty quickly versus waiting till, the fall set and hoping you get 1 or 2.
And just generally speaking, if you're playing a token deck of some sort, particularly mono white, 4 mana for 4 creatures isn't a bad deal at all.
Perfectly fine in my book.
Yeah. Steel Plume Marshal, 3 white for Bird Soldier. Whenever Steel Plume Marshal attacks, other attacking creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Other attacking creatures you control with flying, so it's only relevant for flyers.
Yes.
Is this good enough for Jamocha?
Yes. Yes, it is. Giving everything +2/+2, I mean, that makes Jamocha a 7/9. It makes, Gisela, the Broken Blade, a 6/3, a 6/5. Yeah. My Jamocha deck doesn't have a lot of big-bodied flyers, but it's just going to come in handy when it's like, oh, all the Hornet Queen tokens are now 4/4s.
Right, yeah.
There was a card similar in Core 21 that gave your creatures a flying, I think you gained a life for everyone that attacks or something like that, and for the same amount of mana. This one, I think, for what I'm using it for, doesn't need a lot of bodies on the field, and that's kind of what my Jamocha deck does. It's not a swarm of creatures, it's 2 or 3 at a time.
And, talking about the smaller bodies, most of the bird tribal lists I've ever seen, kind of the problem with bird tribal is the vast majority of them are small creatures, and you're running things like, Dictate of Heliod to buff them up or whatever. This just does it right there. It's baked into a bird that's already has some synergy with your Kangi commander or whatever it is. And it's buffing all of them as well as just being a body that has synergy. So it's relevant there, I think, particularly as well. I think that's it for white that's particularly relevant. Anything in blue you want to talk about here?
I kind of want to talk about the first one in the alphabetical order, which would be Archaeomender. It's a 2/3 for 3, 2 and a blue for a human wizard. And when it enters the battlefield, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So this falls into the Mancer family. We have Archaeomancer. That one gets instants and sorceries back. We have Auramancer, which gets auras back from your graveyard. And now we have one that gets artifacts back. I like that it's in blue. That means I can play it in Brago to get my artifacts back. Just saying. I think this is going to show up in a lot of decks just because it means getting back your commander sphere after you sacrificed it, to replay it next turn. I think there's a lot of cool things you can do.
Yeah, I mean, Sahiwi the Gifted, Brea might be interested in it as well. Yeah, any of those blue artifact-centric commanders. I said those two, like those are the only two. There's a gazillion blue, Urza kind of commanders that Emry, Lurker in the Lock, whatever, that would find this card useful. In addition to Blink decks. So only common too. That's crazy. Yeah, this will see plenty of play, especially for that uncommon slot. Next we have Bruvak, the Grandiloquent, 2 and blue legendary creature human advisor. So we have a mono blue commander here. He's a 1/4. If an opponent would mill one or more cards, they mill twice that many cards instead. The relevant creature type there is Advisor, which is the same as Petitioners, which is very, very important. So this would be a perfectly fantastic mono blue mill commander, and if you are playing mill, almost all of those decks are in blue in some way, shape, or form, and it's great in a deck too. I'm not going to start building mill, but this is going to go in every mill deck.
Oh, yeah, whether it's Petitioners or Phoenix.
Yeah.
Or just something janky. I know Chris has that Petitioners deck that he uses.
And I wonder if he'll switch to this being the commander.
I think it's Dimir right now.
It is. It's currently, because it's Phoenix, right, I think?
It's either Phoenix or Mirko Vosk.
Oh, that's right. He had messed around with both of them.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask him when he comes back.
When he comes back, we got to ask.
So yeah, nothing I really want to build, but it's a neat card. And the flavor text just says, and furthermore, perfect. What a perfect mill card. So yeah, neat and good to see them playing in that design space a little more. Max, back to you. What do you got?
I want to talk about Inyaz the Gale Force. 3 blue for a legendary creature Jin. It's a 4/4 and it has flying. And you can pay 2 and Hybrid Azorius for attacking creatures with flying, get +1/+1 until end of turn. And it also says whenever 3 or more creatures you control with flying attack, each player gains control of a non-land permanent of your choice, controlled by the player to their right.
What a ridiculous ability.
That's not hard to do. Trigger that. I mean, Thopters are in blue. You got Bird Tribal. You got random legendary creatures in blue and white just have flying. This is going to be easy to get going all the time. And a little chaos to the game might be fun for some people.
And you're going to give away, because you're probably running a bunch of those Thopter kind of effects, and you're going to give that Thopter to someone and take something way, way better.
Right. You're going to give them one of your attacking creatures.
That's now tapped.
Yep.
Yeah, it's controlled chaos. It's chaos, but it's chaos that you very much have built to be most effective for you.
And what I really like is it doesn't say gain control of target non-land permanent, so you can get rid of that hexproof blocker that was going to be in your way.
Yep.
And just punch right through. So I really like that it does not target, and so it kind of gets around hexproof, shroud, and all that other fun stuff.
And same with Emil the Blessed before. This is one that has a mono casting cost, but has activated ability, making it 2 color. I actually quite like that effect too. It lets you lean heavily into 1 color, or even make it a 1 color deck if you want to, but you don't have to. I like the flexibility of that as well. Next, we have Ormos Archive Keeper for 6 mana, legendary creature Sphinx. This seems relevant to someone with a Sphinx tribal deck. Flying, as always. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, instead put 5 +1 counters on Ormos Archive Keeper. You can also spend 1 blue, discard 3 cards with different names, and draw 5 cards. So the first ability sounds a bit like a variation on Labman, because you are going to use the draw 5 cards ability here, have no cards in your library, put 25 counters on Ormos, and presumably kill somebody. But you need to have a way to dig down to get to that point. I'm not going to do that in my Sphinx deck. I just have no Labman abilities. I'm sure I've decked myself at some point with something dumb, but that's not a strategy I'm going to build around. However, even if you ignore that ability, if this just reads 3 mana, discard 3 cards with different names to draw 5 cards, that's really, really good on a 5/5 body.
Yeah, that's super good. So does it get a slot in Asperia?
It will. Yeah,
gotcha.
It's worth a slot. So I will probably never ever get to use the draw a card while your library has no cards in it portion of it, because it would require too much setup for a card that's in the 99. But if this is your commander, this could very much be a Labman commander, essentially. You could run all the Laboratory Maniac effects, the way to get down there and have those as win conditions, as well as have this in the command zone that can then be a Labman-esque win condition. So I like it. And I might as well jump to the next one, too, because it is also a Sphinx, Scholar of the Lost Trove for 7 mana. When Scholar of the Lost Trove enters battlefield, you may cast target instant sorcery or artifact card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If an instant or sorcery spell cast this way is put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. This one I think is probably not good enough for me. I'm already not running Chance for the Spires, which casts an opponent's instant or sorcery from their graveyard without paying its mana cost, but it also mills people if it's in your hand early on. And yes, this is yours, maybe you have more control over it, but I just feel like 7 mana is a lot for that effect when you don't know what's going to be in your graveyard. I just don't think this one's probably quite good enough.
Fair enough.
Is it worth playing in a blink deck, do you think? I felt like even then 7 mana is a lot in a blink deck.
I think if it had a little bit of a bigger body, maybe, but the exiling that spell might be difficult for what I would want to use it for. I like the stuff like Archaeomancer that lets me just loop it back to my hand after I cast it.
Yeah, I was having that conversation with somebody about it, and that was kind of my thought. I don't play a blink deck, but like having seen you play yours enough, I feel like you don't want to lose the spell.
Right. I do already run Torrential Gearhulk in that deck, which lets me do this essentially for the same thing, but only once. And I think for one less mana, for a 5/6 instead of a 5/5 with Flash, I'd rather run the Gearhulk over this Sphinx.
Yeah, I get that. All right, so that takes us through blue. What do we have for black here?
We're just going to start it off with Kels Fight Fixer. It's a legendary creature, Azra Warlock, for 2 black. It's a 4/3. It has Menace. Whenever you sacrifice a creature, you may pay Hybrid Dimir. If you do, draw a card. And you can pay 1 generic mana, sacrifice a creature, and Kels Fight Fixer gains indestructible until end of turn. I love this card. This is the Dimir commander I want.
Well, in Azra is a creature type that we only got, I think in Battle Bond is when it first popped up.
Correct.
And they're basically like half demons, I think, was what my assumption was. And we've only recently gotten Warlocks too, so we get the Azra Warlock. Like you said, it's that kind of flexible Dimir. Are you going to build this one, Max? You said this is what you wanted. Is this going to be your Dimir commander?
I want to build this commander really bad, but it would mean having to take a deep dive into Regna and Krav because I do a lot of the token sacrificing already in that deck. So I'm really going to have to...
one thought.
So I think there might be enough stuff in Core Set 21 that I can kind of switch Regna and Krav over to like just a life drain deck, kind of like a Vona, and still run stuff that make tokens, like a Leonin War Leader makes tokens that have lifelink.
Sure.
But take out the Grey Pact, take out the Dictate Erebos, and maybe move that over to this deck. And I would almost kind of go off of what you used to have, do more like the Reassembling Skeleton type deck, where it's just creatures that you can pay 1 and just bring it back to your hand or something. So it'd be different enough, but it's pretty close. So I might need to really carve some time out and look at both of my ideas.
That makes sense. I like it too. I could see that being an effective deck. That was my thought. I started to say before is it feels like right now it's a little bit close to your R&K deck. But that's a good point. You do have a lot of the life stuff in there as well, and you could very easily make that change and turn that into a different enough deck to make Kells still be interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah. We have another legendary creature here. Tiny Bones Trinket Thief. This is so ridiculous. 1 and a black for a skeleton rogue. Rogue subtype is very relevant, even if skeletons aren't. So people that are building Dimir Sig, rogues are probably pumped to get another one. It's 1/2. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent discarded a card this turn, you draw a card and lose a life, and you can spend 4 black back. Each opponent with no cards in hand loses 10 life. So it's a mono black, semi-discard-ish commander that will probably also go in discard decks like Nath of the Gilt Leaf. It's super efficient. It's super cute. It's going to be also a meme commander, I would imagine. What do you think of it, Max?
I know a lot of people that want to build this deck.
So many people were like, oh my god, it's so adorable.
So if I crack a copy, I've already promised my copy to Chris Von Doom.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Yeah, discard stuff is always a little bit tricky. It tends to make people immediately side-eye you and like, I'm killing that person first. Because it's no fun to have no cards in hand. But this one isn't necessarily leaning that heavily into it. I mean, it's rewarding you for opponents discarding, but just one card too. It's the kind of thing where like you might want to spread it around a little bit, and I don't know. I'll be curious to see how well it plays it without being the kind of thing that really ticks off the entire table.
Yeah.
So it's a tough balance to strike, but it's super cute. I'll read the next one too, because this is very much a Dana card. Witch of the Moors, and this looks a lot like some art we had last fall from Eldraine.
Definitely looks like Eldraine art, yeah.
Yeah, 3 black for a human warlock with Death Touch, which is why it's relevant. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, each opponent sacrifices a creature, and you return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So I like that it is a Death Touch creature. I have Death Touch deck. I'm always looking for some win conditions or at least advantages in that deck. I just recently put Exquisite Blood back in the deck because I felt like I needed some more life gain. And so, there's like 3 creatures already that do just happen to have lifelink in there. Wormcoil Engine is 1, Vampire Nighthawk is 1, and there's at least 1 more, if not 2 more. I also then went and put Whip of Erebos in the deck. So
okay,
I'm going to lean a little bit more into some life gain in the deck because it's useful. I tend to pay life to draw cards anyway, so there's no real downside to it. Whip of Erebos is always good. I might as well then just kind of throw this in the deck as well. So it's going to go in my Glissa deck for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to slotting this into Regna and Krav for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good place for it. Or, any Oro deck.
And yeah, I mean, I really wish that this said, at the beginning of each end step, kind of like Regna does, but I guess I'll take it no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, that's all. There wasn't a ton of new black cards, and we talked about 3 of the 4 of them, so let's go over to red. Anything there, Max?
First one I want to talk about is Immolating Gyre. It's 4 red for a sorcery. Immolating Gyre deals X damage to each creature and planeswalker you don't control, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. We just got Riel. There's still Mizzix decks out there. There's the Niv Mizzet decks out there. This is just going to be a powerhouse that slots into so many Spellslinger decks.
But I was even looking at my Kresh deck, and I've got 30-some instant sorceries in my Kresh deck between all the fling effects and things like that. I'm like, well, okay, it's a one-sided board wipe in there for the most part, because very infrequently am I not going to have half a dozen in there.
It's going to make Kresh so big. Oh,
I know. But the Manian Den deck has a bunch of instant sorceries. Well, if you're playing red, you just really often tend to have a lot of instant sorceries. Yeah, this is so good.
Ooh.
I mean, occasionally you will get screwed because you will top deck it the turn after someone hit you with a Bojuka Bog or something. That's going to happen. But there's plenty of times when you're going to have a really nice board state and a bunch of instant sorceries, and you're just going to wipe everyone else's creatures out and then kill people because they no longer have any blockers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like it a lot. Lightning Phoenix, 2 in a red with flying and haste. Lightning Phoenix can't block, and at the beginning of your end step, if an opponent was dealt 3 or more damage this turn, you may pay red, and if you do, return Lightning Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. Every Phoenix built does some variant on that, and they're all kind of interesting, and at some point there will be a perfect commander deck for all the Phoenixes. But this is also the kind of thing, Max, that might be good in that kind of the flip creatures and out of your graveyard deck.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't work in the Dimir one we were talking about, but it's a nice way to sacrifice something and bring it back. And I'm just always kind of a fan of Phoenix cards in general, and this is just one more decent one.
Yeah, I think it's a cool card. I think our editor, Raphael, will probably try to find a slot in his Geared deck.
Yeah, he found a way to. He's playing red-white Phoenixes. This will work in there. So. Yeah. All right, what's next?
Muxus Goblin Grandee. It's 4 red for a legendary creature, Goblin Noble. It's a 4/4, and when it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 6 cards of your library. Put all Goblin creature cards with converted mana cost 5 or less from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom in a random order. Whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each other Goblin you control. I like this card for the Goblin decks out there, both Krankos, Pashlik Mons. I don't see this leading a Goblin deck. I think it is a really cool utility card for Goblin decks.
It will be in 25 Goblin decks, if not more, for every one it's a top of. Yeah, it's. I think it's way better than 99, and it's very good at 99.
Oh, so good.
At the head of the deck, yeah.
And
I like it as well.
The fact that it's not total converted mana cost 5 or less, like some other cards in the game. This is just, if you rip 6 goblins off the top of your deck and they all are 5 or less, put them on the field.
Yeah.
And most
there
of them
are ways
to cheat them up to the top. I mean, there's...
You bet.
I mean, and for all you know, you're going to get one that says, oh, go tutor another goblin and go do this and go, ugh. Now I want to revisit building a Cranko deck.
It's definitely going to be good in there. So talking about tribal stuff, Sethran Hurloon General, 5 mana, 3 red, for a Minotaur Warrior. Whenever Sethran Hurloon General or another non-token Minotaur enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/3 red Minotaur creature token. And you can spend 2 and a hybrid Rakdos. Minotaurs you control get +1/+0 and gain a menace and haste until end of turn. And that's a repeatably activated ability, so you can pump it up as many times as you have mana free.
Yep.
We've gotten a couple Minotaur potential technical commanders in the past with
Neheb,
yeah, 3 different versions of Neheb. But they don't really seem that great atop a Minotaur deck. If you want to build Minotaur Tribal, though, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, I think you'll definitely see the people who didn't like Neheb and went back to something like Mogus, maybe swap this in for Mogus and put Mogus in the 99.
And I always like to point it out because the card I feel like has been underplayed for years, but this is one more Braid of Fire commanders in red where you can use that mana on your upkeep to pump your Minotaurs up, the mana you get from Braid of Fire before it goes away. So if you're looking to build Sethran, pick yourself up a Braid of Fire. It'll be really good in that deck. All right, I think we have one more commander here. What is it, Max?
It's Zerzoth, Chaos Rider. It's a legendary creature devil for 2 and a red. It's a 2/3. And whenever an opponent draws their first card each turn, if it's not their turn, you create a 1/1 red devil creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And then whenever one or more devils you control attack one or more players, you and those players each draw and then discard a card at random. I checked here. There are 27 mono red devils in the game that are legal in Commander.
Oh, that's crazy.
That's enough. That's enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not counting
it's a
changelings.
Weird deck. Right. And I think there's a couple that even make devil tokens, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Not sure if you caught those or not, but yeah, this is going to be a super weird fun deck.
Yeah. It gives me a reason to run Hell Rider.
There we go. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I was looking at this, I'm like, do I want to try? Because I've wanted to build a mono red deck for years. I've tried a few times, and nothing's ever quite stuck. I was looking at this going, is this going to be what I'm going to wind up doing? So I'm actually kind of considering this one.
Nice.
All right, let's jump over to green. This is probably less a commander card than it might be in CEDH or something. Allosaurus Shepherd, single green for a 1/1. It can't be countered. Green spells you control can't be countered. And you can spend 4 green until end of turn. Each elf creature you control has base power and toughness 5/5 and becomes a dinosaur in addition to its other creature types. So I guess when I say it's not necessary for a commander, it's probably decent in an elf deck because it gives you one more kind of overrun effect. But I've seen a lot of CEDH players talking about it in their combo decks just as a way to keep the green parts of their combos from being countered, particularly because it's such a cheap card. Only add 1 green mana to cast it and have it sit there and just protect your combo. But it's solid enough in an elf deck or even a shaman deck as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I would love to build an elf deck and just put this in here. And, elf build decks usually win by, a bunch of elves, Craterhoof, Overwhelming Stampede. But pumping them all up to be base 5/5 to begin with is huge.
Then casting, it's so good. So that one, it's a mythic, and I would guess this one's probably a little bit pricier because I think it's going to see play in multiple different ways in decks, but it's a neat card. What do we have next, Max?
We have Branching Evolution. It's an enchantment for 2 and a green. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1/+1 counters are put there instead. So is this a cheaper Parallel Lives?
Parallel Lives is the token portion of it.
Okay.
So Doubling Season doubles tokens and counters. Parallel Lives does just the tokens. This does just the +1 counters. If you're playing a +1 counters deck, it's right in between Hardened Scales and Doubling Season is something you are going to want.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in my Crush deck for sure.
Yeah, it's just a good card, and I bet it was print this or reprint something like Primal Vigor or something like that.
And it's always good to see new cards too, although it then requires you to find room for them. But yeah, cool card. We have our hybrid Gruul commander here. 2 green for Naiath of the Dire Hunt, a human warrior. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, draw a card. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 and hybrid Gruul. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn. That creature must be blocked this combat if able. that's an interesting commander in Gruul. You're doubling creature's power, which is pretty relevant, but it has to get blocked. I don't know what I don't have anything I would do with this. I have a Gruul deck anyway, and I don't know if I have any decks, I'm sure I don't, where I want to put this in. But, that's a unique Gruul deck to build.
Yeah, fight is always that weird thing in EDH. Kind of like mill, it's kind of hard to do to the entire table.
Yeah.
The fact that its first ability is one or more creatures, so you're not getting it off of every creature that gets blocked. It's cool. It's a cool design, and I'm sure someone out there has a really cool build already for it, and I want to see them. It just isn't my cup of tea.
There's been someone who's, and I've seen multiple fight decks before, people that have been looking for their chance to build a commander that particularly caters to it. And again, they've been doing a pretty good job lately, I think, of looking around and being like, okay, what weird niche corner case mechanic do people play and they want a commander for? And this is just one more. So
yeah,
they've been slowly checking stuff off that list. And if you've wanted your fight commander, here it is in Gruul. We have one more creature here. It's a mythic, Max. You want to tell us what it is?
It's Towering Titan, 4 green for a creature giant. It's a 0/0, but it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control. And then you can also sacrifice a creature with Defender. All creatures gain trample until end of turn. Doran likes this. Arcades likes this.
Yeah.
When this card first was previewed, I misread it, and I just thought it said it entered with X +1/+1 counters on it, where X was total toughness of all other creatures. And I'm like, well, geez, that's going right into Crush. That's better than Realm Seekers. And then I'm like, oh, I can't read, so hooked on Phonics, everybody.
At 6 mana, it's just not reliable. I don't think enough for that deck for me. But those wall decks are always kind of looking for a haymaker, and this gives them... I think they need the win condition kind of thing more than I do in that Crush deck, so... It's much more playable there, I think.
For sure.
This is absolutely going to be a brutal card to deal with in limited environments.
Oh yeah, if you crack this, whatever deck this is in, and shuffle it up with one other one, you might do pretty well, I think.
Yeah. All right. Last but not least, we have the cycle of lands, the Thriving Lands. They enter the battlefield tapped. There's Thriving Heath, Thriving Isle, Thriving Moor, Thriving Bluff, and Thriving Grove. When they ETB, you choose a color other than their respective color. So like Thriving Heath, when it comes into play, you choose a color other than white, and you may then tap it for white or 1 mana of the chosen color. What do you think of this cycle?
So, I originally wasn't super hot on these, but knowing that 5-color mana bases are getting pricey to build, even when you just consider shock lands are now, $10 to $15 a piece, or $30 in the case of Breeding Pool. I think in a 2-color deck, this is probably not as good as like the Temples, because you don't really get anything other than they make your color pair.
Right, yeah.
But I do think for a budget land base past 2 colors, these are probably worth considering. The only problem is keeping track of what the other color is. So like I bought from Infinity Tokens, they make little chips for like the ability counters. You could easily get one of those, and if you play the Thriving Moor, and it's a black-red, something like that. A budget option, I like them better than Guildgates. But I think you got to be playing 4 or more colors, really.
Well, in the problem then, so once you get to like the 5-color decks, for example, you have all the ETB tapped lands that make 3 colors, the cycle from Khans, and we just got the Triomes, which also come into play tapped and are going to make you 3 of the colors you need. Granted, you probably can't you can't exactly pick, I definitely need a black this turn, so I'm going to make this black. But like odds are it's going to hit the color you need. So the more colors you have in your deck, this seems like they get better, but then you also have more options. And like once you're up to 4 and 5 colors, then you instead of have all those triple lands and the tap land and the Triomes. So I agree there's a place for them. I feel like it might actually wind up being a budget 3-color mana base.
Okay.
Because then you only have the 1 Triome or the 1 Concentrated land. That's the only triple land you have versus having access to all of them in a 5-color deck.
Yeah.
So then this gives you that land that you can also tweak to like, okay, it makes me black and I can make sure it makes me red because I've drawn no red sources. So that's where I think the true home probably is in that like a budget 3-color mana base. But I do like that they're trying to do different weird things with these lands every time. At some point, they're going to run out of ideas, but, these are neat, and you need some kind of fixing in these sets, too, and they could have just thrown a bunch more of the, gain 1 life when it comes into play tapped lands, and they didn't try to do something different. I like that. So those are all the new cards that we think are worth touching on. We also got a ton of reprints. Like, Core Set had a bunch of good reprints, Core 2021. These are better. We got even better reprints here, I think.
Yeah. The fact that they could make this so it skips standard, I think allowed them to put a bunch of really cool cards that people have been wanting. Sorry, no fetch lands, but, we get some really cool stuff.
Yeah. So we'll each throw out, say, 3 of them that we think are particularly relevant we want to touch on for whatever reason. Oh, what's the first one you want to mention here, Max?
First one I want to mention is a Craterhoof Behemoth. It's a $50 card, and it's had one other reprint, to my knowledge. It was in one of the Modern Masters, and it was in Absent Restored. More copies is just good. I know it's one of those cards that's maybe not fun to lose to, but games have to end, and this is definitely how they end.
And you need a board state, you need to have creatures in play to lose to it, and you need to have the 8 mana. I don't like losing to Craterhoofs either, but I always feel like, well, I let the person get 7 creatures in play, so that's my fault.
How do you feel about losing to 2 Craterhoofs, though?
That's less fun.
What about you? What's your first one, Dana?
First one I have here is Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, originally in Conspiracy 2. Selvala is relevant, and it's good to get a reprint because that was also, again, a really expensive card. It was, over $40. But it's good as a commander. It does see CEDH and competitive EDH play. We have a pretty big 1v1 scene here in town, and that Selvala Brostorm deck won a couple of 1v1 commander tournaments here. It's relevant in elf decks too. It's a really good card to have in elf decks. It just has one more good elf commander, or one more good elf card in your decks. I played in Recce History Kamigawa. It's just a solid commander that unfortunately shouldn't have been $40+, and it's good to see people get a chance to get theirs because there just was not enough conspiracy packs cracked, so this gives everyone a second shot at picking up a Selvala.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Max, what's your number 2?
I'm going to jump over to a land, and that's Phyrexian Tower. So this was most recently reprinted in Ultimate Masters, but it taps for a colorless, and you can sacrifice a creature to make double black mana. It just needed a reprint, another reprint. It was sitting at $20 prior to this, and it goes in a lot of good mono black 2-color decks, even some 3-color decks if you're in that sacrifice strategy.
Yeah, just one of those cards that was just getting out of control, and it just needed more printings. Speaking of out of control, no one likes having Heuristic Study cast against them. It's super annoying, but it's also super powerful, and it just sucked that it hit $25-ish, and a lot of people felt like they couldn't afford to run one in their blue deck. I run one in one blue deck. I've put a cap on how many I run because I think it is kind of an annoying card. No one likes to be asked every turn, and it goes in every blue deck, but I don't want to run it. But if you are someone who's relatively new to Commander, maybe just couldn't afford one or couldn't find one, a lot of times stores just didn't have them out because, number one, they're in demand. Number two, the last easy to find printing was, way back in Prophecy. It did get a mystery booster printing and a Judge gift card, but that doesn't help most people. So, while I don't want anyone to cast Heuristic Study against me, it just needed more printings.
Yeah.
So we got one, the price is going to fall, people can get them if they want them. Don't play it against me, but now you can get one to play against Max.
Hey.
All right. Last one to you, Max.
Last one is kind of a pet card of mine in Duelist's Heritage. It's an enchantment for 2 and a white, and whenever one or more creatures attacks, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. I run this in a couple decks, and it is not only great for me, but it makes people not want to attack me because then I can give something of theirs double strike. It's a really fun political card without being too political.
My only complaint about the selection here, Max,
it was your last one too?
No. Well, I considered it. It's that there's no foils in Jumpstart, and there already wasn't a foil of Duelist Heritage.
I know.
So it's too bad we're not going to get our foil now. However, I think it's a really underappreciated card, and I totally agree it's good to see more of them out there for people.
Worst case, I'll send a few off to Mr. Ryan Panaf and have him work some magic.
There you go. That's a good idea. My last one here is Rise of the Dark Realms. 7 black, and put all creature cards from the graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Like Craterhoof, it's a card that probably wins you games pretty frequently, although it's a little bit more difficult to cast in the current state of webcam EDH. But when this first came out in M14, it was for a long time like a $2 or $3 card. And I just remember being like, I don't understand why a bunch more black decks aren't just running this to win the game on turn 10 or 12. And it's still almost all you don't have to make a game-winning play. 9 mana if you get back like 3 creatures from your opponents is still almost always a really good play. And there's plenty of times you get back 14 creatures or 16 creatures or whatever. Just accidentally, that's before we even get into decks that intentionally are, milling themselves if you're playing a Phoenix deck, or milling everyone Phoenix deck, I should say, or self-milling if you're doing something like that. It's just a really, really good card. And after that kind of caught on that it was a really good card, it went from being like that $2 mythic to, again, a almost $30 card for a long time. It needed a reprint. A card that came from a core set 4 years ago shouldn't be $25. So it gives people a win condition in decks that maybe struggle with that a little bit. It's a cool card, it's a fun card, and it needed a reprint.
For sure. And people, run your scavenger grounds.
Run scavenger grounds everywhere, because I did not get a reprint. Okay, Jumpstart is out, you said mid-July.
July 17th is the release date.
Okay, a great product. And they, you know what? People can complain about the lack of fetchland reprints, and I get it, but they've been doing a great job reprinting almost everything else between the core set and this.
Oh, for sure. And we kind of didn't even mention the fact that majority of Jumpstart will be on Arena.
Yeah.
They're changing, I think, a dozen cards. There's an article out there. Go find it, people. But they're definitely putting this in Arena, so I think they'll be historic legal. I could be wrong. Internet, please tell me.
I think you are correct. It will be historic legal. So yeah, between these two sets, we got a ton of reprints. We have double masters coming out in, 6 weeks or something. And the commander decks this fall in Zendikar Rising, aside from the commanders, are going to be almost all reprints too. And because there's no new cards there, although that's kind of a bummer, that also lets them have much more room for reprint equity in those decks. So they could put some more good reprints there as well. They're just putting cards out there for people this year.
It's the year of Commander.
Yeah, and in the fetch lands, again, they didn't get hit, but everything else is getting reprinted if you needed them.
For sure.
So that's good for everybody. Because it's easy to take for granted the fact that you and I started doing this 6 years ago and got to get that Rise of the Dark Realms for, $2 and got to pick up Rhystic Studies. Rhystic Studies were like $1.50 not that long ago. And it was easy for us to get ours, but it's not easy for somebody else. And that is unfortunate. And of course, it's not going to become a $1.50 card now, but it's at least going to be a little bit easier. And the game just needs that.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's going to take care of this Jumpstart episode 210. We will be back with a new show next week. I am Dana. You can find me on the Twitter birds at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDR_Max. You can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. And our show's edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him on Twitter birds at Ursa Bearwalker. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. Until next week, I'm Dana.
And I'm Max.